All right, good morning. The Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion observed many women in leadership within the county and selected this group of amazing women to spotlight this morning in honor of Women's History Month. So let's begin our coffee and conversations with a welcome from Janine Hooks, Minority Business Assistant Center, followed by greetings from County Administrator Kenneth Wilson, and then you will hear directly from these impressive women from our County Commissioner, Deputy County Administrator, Directors, and Administrators to hear their stories of leadership. Janine?
Good morning, Marlise, and thank you so much for reaching out to Columbus Urban League Minority Business Assistance Center to organize a coffee and conversation. It's been over a year since we've all been able to gather like this, so it is truly a pleasure to see everyone in attendance bright and early on this windy morning. If you don't know anything about MBAC, I just want to share just a couple sentences about what we do. We service the emerging minority, women-owned, veteran-owned, and small business owner. We do that by supporting their growth and sustainability through technical assistance, access to capital, and connection to business opportunities. So continue to talk about what we're doing at MBAC. We're doing fantastic work under the leadership at Columbus Urban League, and I look forward to working with you soon again and in the future. I would now like to introduce County Administrator Kenneth Wilson.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here this morning to greet everyone for coffee and conversations, women in leadership. As County Administrator of the largest county in the state of Ohio, I am so lucky to have such a group of talented women that work with me every day to provide services to the 1.3 million residents of Franklin County. The Board of Commissioners stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion every day, and it's a reflection of all the work that we are driven to do. This group here represents that promise to the residents of Central Ohio. They all have unique skills, all bring special talents to the table that makes us be one of the more caring counties anywhere in the country. Servant leadership is reflected in the work that we do each day. And I can't think of a greater example of servant leadership, of power and grace than Commissioner Marilyn Brown. She's been a leader in Franklin County in the area of smart justice, early childhood, a strong promoter of family-friendly work policies. So I just so pleased this morning to kick off this event by now passing the mic to Commissioner Marilyn Brown.
Thank you, Ken. And I'm so honored to be here among this great group of leaders that we have here today. What a tribute to Franklin County to have so many great women leaders in our county government. And this is just a sample of all the great women leaders we have. And, you know, as I think about my role in county government, I remember back to when I first ran for commissioner and I wanted the job. I never imagined running for office. And it was a matter of being asked and really thinking hard about, did I want the job? And I did when I looked at the variety and breadth and depth of the things that county government can do to improve the lives of residents in our community. And I had to really think hard about whether I wanted to take on a longtime incumbent who was in this seat that I hold dear. And I really never imagined running for office. It was never a passion of mine to run for office. I had always worked behind the scenes in campaigns. And as I got to learn more about what we could do in office, I really, really decided I had to do it. And it came attached with an election. And that's how I've always seen the office. You know, I love the work. I love what we can do. And oh, it comes attached with an election. And that's what you have to do sometimes. You have to really figure out what you really want to do and do what you need to do to be able to do what you want to do. And, you know, it was not an easy decision. To run for office is not easy. To run for re-election is not easy. But when you have an overriding passion and desire to make a difference in the community, in the lives of residents that you serve, I feel like it's sometimes the way I felt I needed to do it. And over the years, since I was elected initially in 2006, I found this was my way to really meet the needs of our residents. And I know each of you have found your ways to meet the needs of our residents. And I'm so thrilled that we have great leaders that have found ways to do what I've done. Finding the ways that you really can work in the community, whether it's non-elected or elected, to meet the needs that you have and know you're helping others is so rewarding. And it really, you see the difference you make at the county level. I think it's the level of government that really allows people to see where you can make a difference and get in and make that difference in people's lives. And I don't think there's any other place in government where you can really do that. And so for that, I'm very grateful to have held this position since 2007 when I took office.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think is the most significant barrier for female leadership?
I think it's maintaining balance. If I had to say any one thing, it's maintaining balance. For women, we have so many issues on our plate where we take and feel responsible for everything in our lives. And often we are responsible for everything in our lives, whether it's being head of family, being head of everything that goes on with your children, with our children, maintaining some kind of balance. I was fortunate when I ran for office that my children were young adults, but they're children still, and they're always my children. And even though I've got a very supportive husband, it's still, I feel the responsibility. And I've got a daughter with special needs. She's got physical disability, and I'm always the one that feels that in my heart, and always the one that takes that responsibility when she has a need. And so I think women feel the responsibilities of everything. And to be able to do that work that's so important and maintain the responsibilities of home, family, parents, children, and everything else, you need to really be a really special person to be able to balance that. and take care of yourself at the same time. And usually the take care of self is the last thing we do as women.
Exactly, exactly. I feel that. Being a parent of a young adult as well, you're always thinking, what can I do to help? And then there's family members, and with the pandemic, it doesn't help either. And you have
Right.
parents that are going through this. So this mentorship. Have you had a mentor during your career? And are you mentoring now?
I am always mentoring. I had some good people that I relied on as I was coming up in my professional career, but I always try to mentor people and am always willing to help people as they're coming up, especially as it comes to education and getting their life on track, because I was one of those late developers and I was not a traditional school person right out of high school. Instead, I got married soon after high school and did everything backwards. I got married, had children 3 years later, and then went back and then did school. And so I've always told people that there is no one right way, and you can do things the way that works for you. And if you decide to go to college with children at home, do it. And you will be surprised how you get through day by day. You won't even believe that in 2 years from now, or 3 years or 4 years, that you actually did it. You will find the time, if you really want to find the time to get through. You will. And if it's something you're highly motivated to do at any time in your life, to go back to school, to go to school, or to go to some kind of training, you'll find the time, and you won't even realize when you fit it in after you get done. You just won't. But it's important to know yourself and to know how you can get that done and get the help and supports around you to do it. And that's where I fit in, to be helpful and help people.
Great, thank you. I have one more question for you. What are the keys to developing the next generation of leaders?
I think there's several. I think we need to make sure that those who want to be serving in any capacity, whether it's in staff or elected, need to understand that things don't come so quickly, that it's not a matter of just jumping in and being successful. The work matters. Doing the work really matters. It's a lot of people that I've talked to that are in their younger years and feel like they want to be successful at whatever, think it comes overnight. It doesn't come overnight. And the hard work is hard. And people don't realize that all of us have done the hard work, and it takes some time. People are less patient now than we might have been. We might have been less patient, but we did the work. And I think it's important to recognize that it's really necessary to put in the work. It doesn't need to take 30 years, but you need to put in the time and do the work. You can't expect to be promoted to the next big thing if you haven't shown willingness to put in the hard work. we have leaders in town who want to jump to the next thing right away. And it doesn't work really well. It just shows that it just doesn't work real well. You have to put in the time and the work, and there's no getting around it.
I agree. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know your schedule is pretty crammed, but I appreciate you taking the time this morning to talk about
I'm
your
thrilled to
story.
do this.
Great.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna put myself off video, but listen in as I do a few things. I
Sure.
really want to hear what all of everybody else says.
I would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Now we're going to move to our panel of women within the county. And I'm just going to do a round robin of questions to these wonderful women this morning. First, thank you all for taking the time again for being here. And I'm just going to start on my screen, no particular order. You all will be asked this first question. Please tell me your story. How did you get your start? Describe your current position and agency and function. And I'll begin with Jenny.
Good morning. I didn't expect to be first, so I guess there's always a first. My name is Jenny Snapp. I'm the Assistant Director at Franklin County Economic Development and Planning. I've been at Economic Development and Planning since 2014. I manage planning, building, zoning, GIS, community development, and all of the operations of our office. So everything but economic development. So often I like to say that the work that I manage at Economic Development and Planning isn't the sexy work, but it's the hard work. So sometimes what we do in our office is not necessarily seen as the fancy, smooth, sexy stuff, but it's the work that gets done, and it's the work that we do that really makes a difference in people's lives. And it's actually interacting with the public quite a bit. So we do a lot of work with the public who comes in for things like permits. We administer grants and HUD funds. So we do interact with our customers and our public on a daily basis. So it's important work that we do. So how I got my start is I actually have a master's degree in geography and urban planning. So it's an interesting story, and not many people know what that is, but it often if you go to a party or a wedding and they say, oh, what do you do? And you say that you're in urban planning, they say, oh, so you plan weddings? No, I don't plan weddings. Anyways, so there aren't many of us in that field, but it's a specialized field. So, and that makes it all the harder, I think, if you're a minority or a female in this field. So when I started out there, weren't many females, particularly at the leadership level. So although there are minorities and women and more of them now, but when you get to the management level, you'll see fewer and fewer of people of color and also females at that level. So I actually got my start in Toledo. I did industrial site selection for the Toledo Regional Growth Partnership in economic development. So I started out in economic development, ended up in planning because I realized that economic development necessarily wasn't really up my alley. I'm not a natural salesperson. So I tend to like to do more of the hard work behind the scenes. So then I realized I wasn't getting my master's degree completed I started out doing an internship with that organization and got hired on. And then I realized I wasn't getting my master's degree finished. I moved back to my hometown, was doing some substitute teaching at the time, was called from the 3-county regional planning commission in that area, Logan, Union, Champaign County. Was a former county engineer there who called and asked if I would be interested in taking a planning position there. He was working as the interim director at the time, as he was a retired county engineer, and he really mentored me to take on the directorship of that position. So after a year, I was promoted to director of that organization, and I was there for 12 years. surprisingly. So I was the director of the Logan Union Champaign Regional Planning Commission, and I reported to a 29-member board, all of which were men. So it was a hard work, but I like to think that I educated them along the way. So and then in 2014, the position opened up at Franklin County. Originally, it was for planning administrator, and Jim Shimmer had talked to me about creating a new position at the organization for assistant director and trying to merge several divisions of our organization under one manager, which traditionally hadn't been done there at Economic Development and Planning. So here I am today.
Thank you. We'll move on to Joy Vivians, Deputy County Administrator.
Good morning, everyone. And good morning, Maurice. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to my fellow panelists. I do not remember the questions. So I was really interested in the stories. Jenny's story is very interesting. I did not know. You find a lot out about people when you ask them the real question.
Yeah. So it's tell me your story. How did you get your start, and describe your position and role with the county?
So back in 2005, I believe it was, I was a case manager at Job and Family Services. I did not stay long, but I did stay long enough to learn how to process cases. I then realized that I wanted to do something different. So I opened up a home care agency, and I did that for about 10 years. I served on a lot of boards in the community, developed some really strong relationships. One of the boards that I served on was the Workforce Development Board, and I eventually became the chair. I was a vice chair, then I became the chair of that board. And I worked closely with the then director, Director Trotman. Had a conversation with him, and he was, he said, I heard you're selling your company. Think it'd be a good time for you to come back. And I said, I said, you want me to come back to process cases? And he said, no. He said, he's like, I really need a COO, and I was hoping that you could consider being a COO. And I was like, okay. So we negotiated. It came back. Unfortunately, 3 weeks later, and I know this is probably being aired, he left me here. He went on to Mecklenburg, unbeknownst to me. So I wrestled with applying for the director position at the time, because I didn't know if I really wanted to lead another thing. When I was the owner of a home care agency, I served all of basically Central Ohio. So it was a lot of work. It wasn't until I think the posting ended at midnight on December 31st or something like that, 11:59 or 11:55. I woke up and something said, you just go ahead and apply. So I did, went through the process, and here I am. My current role now is the Deputy County Administrator of Health and Human Services. Basically, what we see in human services is there are a lot of silos, right? So I have to come to Job and Family Services to get one thing, and then I go over to aging to get another thing, and then I go over somewhere else to get the other thing. And many times, because we're all doing the work, we're not all collectively having collective conversation that's more beneficial to the family and residents that we serve. So my role was created to align our systems to better serve our families and residents in Franklin County. I think I started serving in this role in November or December. I can't remember, and I hope no one gets offended by that, because I don't remember. And I know my boss will correct me. So that is how I got my start, and that is the role that I serve in now, in aligning all of our health and human service agencies under the Board of Commissioners, as well as working to ensure that our poverty blueprint plan is executed.
Great, thank you. Let's move to Melissa to hear your story.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is coffee and conversation, so cheers to everyone. I'm gonna have a little coffee first. Marlise, thank you for considering me for this. It's quite an honor to be on the screen with these incredible women and to hear these stories, because there's some things I have a feeling I'm gonna learn about the ladies on this screen that I did not know. I'll keep mine short and sweet. So right now, I currently serve, I have the honor of serving as the interim director of the Office of Justice Policy and Programs until our new director begins, which we hope is soon. To give you a little bit of background, I've been with this agency, goodness, this is gonna make me sound really old, and I kind of am, but going back to 2000, where I came on as a grants coordinator, grants administrator, justice policy evaluator. Back then, there was only 3 staff here, so we each wore a lot of hats. So I started with this agency, and it's kind of interesting and something a lot of you might not know if you haven't been at the county. As long as our agency has been a number of things, and I think it's a true testament to the county's ability to evolve as we need to evolve based on trends and conditions. Back in 2000, our agency was just the justice policy and programs, and all we did was administer formula grant funds. That was what we did. We had 3 grants, and we also were the administrative agency to the Criminal Justice Planning Board. Then 9/11 happened, and we had to step up. And we literally, within a year of me coming to this agency, became the Office of Homeland Security and Justice Programs. So at one point I was learning all about the grants, and then all of a sudden, whoop, I needed to learn about the Homeland Security environment. So that was kind of an interesting learning curve. It was a scary time in everyone's lives at that point, but I think the country evolved and did what we needed to do. As the times changed, and obviously we all started seeing and becoming more aware of some of the inequities out there, the injustices, we then we evolved into the Justice Policy and Programs Unit, which is what we are today. So this has been an agency of many different hats. We've worn a lot of different capes, but it's been an exciting time to be part of this organization. My background, real quickly, I have a master's in social agency development. All along, the trajectory was for me to graduate high school, get my undergrad, get my master's, and then the goal was to go on to the FBI. You know how goals are, you know how plans are. At that time, the FBI was very interested in individuals who were graduating with accounting degrees. I was not interested in accounting, which is surprising because I love numbers, but that was not the trajectory for me. I also didn't have a Russian background at that point in time. That's very much what the FBI wanted. So I started, went to community corrections right out of college. I was a juvenile probation officer. I had a caseload of 15 females. And I'll be honest, the male caseload, the male probation officers all said, we'll take 50 males for every 15 females that you have on probation. We're a challenging bunch. We all know that, ladies, right? But I'll say this, and I really mean it. If I were to win the lottery tomorrow, I would go back and I would be a juvenile probation officer again. That's where my heart is. That's where I feel like I did the greatest good. I love what I do now, but that's really where I felt like I moved the needle. And again, thank you, Marlise, for having me on here.
You're very welcome, Melissa. Thank you. Now we'll move to Dana. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in Coffee and Conversations. And I really do feel honored to be among this esteemed group of well-accomplished women. My role in the county is I am the administrator of community partnerships, and my agency is really titular. It's really not an agency, but I serve the purpose of facilitating the discretionary grant programs on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. So it's a wonderful job. And how I came to this particular role, just going back to the issue of mentorship. A friend who was my boss, and we stayed connected, and she saw the posting. She worked at the county, and she said, "I think you should apply for this job." And I said, I can't even understand what they're talking about, because the county, the job descriptions are not always straightforward. And she said, no, this is what it really means. You apply. And she encouraged me to do that, and I'm really glad she did, because it really is a great fit. My background is actually in gerontology, and that is where I spent the first half of my career. I came to Columbus directly after earning a master's degree in gerontological studies from Miami University, and that program was my whole entire heart. I loved working in the aging community, and the first big job that I had here in Columbus was working for Heritage Day Health Centers. And in that role, I eventually became the assistant director of that organization. And I learned so much from the executive director about leading with integrity and really believing in the mission of an organization and leading by example. The clients that we had the privilege of serving were the reason that we were employed. So therefore, if we were short-staffed and a client needed assistance in the restroom, we helped. And we were happy to do so because no one's job was at such a status that you were above helping in any capacity when it was needed. So that was a wonderful way to sort of come into professionalism. And, that role just really helped me to understand making connections in the community and networking and making connections and relationships with caregivers and learning the walk that they had. So anyways, some of the skills that I learned on that job were grant writing, which I went on to do in a number of other organizations, which really prepared me in a very circuitous way to sit in the chair that I have at the county. So when I am deploying a grant, an RFP, getting ready to receive grant applications, I understand what it's like to work for a nonprofit and how much pressure there is sometimes for an executive director who wears 10 hats. And so having that compassion and the understanding of what it's like to, try and make everything work for an organization, I think really informs my role. And, it's wonderful to work with so many capable nonprofit organizations that I have said many times are the backbone as well as the safety net in this community. So it's really a privilege to work with those wonderful nonprofit organizations on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. So that's my story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Move on to Carolina. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Marlise, thank you so much for the invite. It is an honor to be sharing this space with such distinguished women, and I really appreciate the invite. So I serve the Board of Commissioners as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Administrator. This is a new position for the Board of Commissioners. And it is an absolute honor to serve within the Human Resources Department. And the primary role of that position is I work to integrate the principles of equity and inclusion into everything that we do. And so you have seen the county really commit, and the commissioners really lead this effort. You've seen us declare racism as a public health crisis. You've seen the explicitly saying that racial equity is a core principle of governance for us. And so there are permanent structures being put in place so that we can really move forward in this goal. One of the, I had the Racial Equity Council, and that is a group of, and I see two members of the council here with me, Jenny and Dana. And so it's made up of 28 members from the Board of Commissioners agencies, and we are developing recommendations and measurable objectives so that we can apply equity and inclusion to recruiting, learning and development, programming, and service delivery. And I also serve in advisory roles for community initiatives. How I got to where I am right now is an interesting story. So I actually grew up in Southern California, and my move to Columbus was due to me falling in love. And so that's how I got to Columbus. I fell in love. It did work out, so I just put that out there. But I moved to Columbus, And that, you know, it was a weekend. I got myself set up in my new apartment. And that following Monday, I was starting at Job and Family Services as a case manager. So that was my first role at the county. It was at Job and Family Services as a case manager. And within that experience, I always say that it was at Job and Family Services that I really fell in love with our community and with serving our residents. And I had the opportunity to participate in their Emerging Leaders program, which was transformative to me as a person and as a professional. The actual coursework and also some very important questions that the Deputy County Administrator, Joy Vivians, asked me really sparked something in me and developed something in me that has helped me be where I'm at today. One of an interesting part of the story of where I get from JFS to HR is, so participating in that Emerging Leaders program, I had an opportunity to share about my experience with the rest of the program members, share it with the commissioners in one of the general sessions. And I had just recently applied for a position at Human Resources. And it just happens that the director, Rob Young, was present at that general session and was able to hear me speak. I see Deputy County Administrator Joy Vivians shaking her head. I'm sure if Rob was on, he would have some comments on that.
He's listening, Caroline. I just called him a thief.
And so I then transitioned to the Human Resources Office. And I like to mention, I had applied before and I did not get the position. And that's a really important part of my story, because I just want to encourage everyone, you know, whatever it is that you have in your heart, your mission and your purpose, just because it doesn't happen the way that you think it will, do not stop. Keep going, go after it. And make sure that you're participating in the resources that you have. Apply for that leaders program. Say yes to opportunities, because you never know how those will interconnect and help you get to where you're supposed to be. Sometimes where we want to be ends up looking a little bit different, but we always end up where we're supposed to be. And so that is my story of how I moved to Columbus and started my job at Job and Family Services, moved to HR, and now I have the absolute pleasure and just I'm so humbled by the opportunity to serve as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Administrator.
Great story. Thank you, Carolina. Last but not least, Charlotte. Your story, please.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. My name's Charlotte Ashcraft. I'm the Director of Fleet Management. And if Melissa thinks dating herself back in the 2000s, then I'm going to really date myself. So I've been with the county since 1990. I started here long ago. And I was brought to fleet management to, and this will date me as well, to bring the organization to computers. They didn't even like doing things on paper, let alone touching a computer. So fleet management, what we do here is we handle all of the vehicles for all of the county agencies. We have about 500 vehicles in the fleet. We do everything imaginable. We make a car a cruiser. We handle everything that has to do with a car. I do not. So that's not my job. So it's been my pleasure to work for Franklin County for 30 years. I've seen it transition a lot and change a lot in those 30 years. One of the things in the fleet industry is I'm typically the only female. I've been to conferences and been to trade shows, and I've seen things, and generally I'm asked, "Oh, who's your husband?" And I'm like, no, I am the Director of Fleet Management. The first few times I was offended, Next few times I was like, whatever. So I've seen that in the industry. And now when I go, I see more and more females. It is a male dominated industry. I'm used to that. One of the things that Sheriff Jim Carnes told me was that a female can be just as strong as a male. You just have to do it. Do not let a male intimidate you, because you have it and you need to show it. And I thought that was probably the best thing anybody ever told me as a woman, because I think that's where women fail. We fear that people aren't going to accept us in the roles that may not traditionally be what we're supposed to be. Don't let fear stop you. Let it fuel you to prove what you can do, because we can. We can do just as good a job as any man. I've sat in this seat longer than any man has ever sat in this seat at Fleet. And I'm proud of that. And I don't intend to go anywhere. Everyone asks me if I'm going to retire. I don't know. Maybe not. So, but I enjoy my job and I enjoy working for Franklin County. The commissioners are so supportive of everyone who works here, and the things that we strive to do, they strive to help us do that. And I'm proud to be a Franklin County employee. So, well, that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you. Learning a lot about you women this morning that I didn't know. Glad to know. So I have a question. I'll just ask a couple of you this question, but feel free if you would like to answer. What do you think is the most significant barrier to female leadership?
Can I jump in, Maurice?
You may.
I think one of the barriers is feeling like we have to conform to what society looks at as success as women, right? There's a certain size, there's a certain, all these parameters that and images that I think we see in the media that we measure ourselves to. I think we're moving out of that now. And then to Commissioner Brown's point is, the balance, trying to balance it all, that you can do it, but at the same time, it becomes a barrier because you're trying to manage it. And for me, walking in my true authentic self, understanding that I don't have to articulate like anyone else. I'm who I am. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. So, and I think owning who you are and being authentic and working and understanding what value that you bring. But I think the barrier is looking outside of what success is measured by media or other images, as well as balance. Managing the balance could be a barrier.
I'm going to add to that because a significant part of my story is being a single mom. So, when I joined Franklin County and I was pondering the decision I was about to make, I didn't expect it. But when I first started talking to Jim about this position, I wasn't going through a divorce. But when it came time for him to finally offer me the position, I was going through a divorce. And it was the biggest part of the decision that I had to make to come to Franklin County. And it was the best decision I ever made to come to Franklin County. And my son was 2. And I thought the world was falling down on me. And I thought, there is no way I can do this and take on such a leadership role. But it was the best thing I ever did, because Franklin County, I can say, is the most supportive employer that I have ever had as far as being a parent and a female. The work-life balance is so hard as a female leader, but I think Franklin County is the best employer that I could ever have had going through that process as a single parent. So when we talk about the barriers, I think the work-life balance is absolutely, for me, the biggest barrier as a female leader, but I couldn't have a more supportive employer going through that than Franklin County, especially during COVID. I think that Franklin County has been an absolutely amazing leader getting through COVID I particularly me as a female leader and a single parent going through that. I couldn't have done it anywhere else. So.
Marlies?
Marlies, if I could jump in there, this one really resonates with me. And I agree with everything Jenny and Joy said. You know, I think as females, we've been brought up, and I hate to say this, but there's just unconscious bias, and it's not that others put on us, it's that we put on each other. I think at times women, we can be our own worst enemies. And I think it's because we've been brought up, it's an unconscious thing that we've been brought up that it's a zero-sum game, that if she's getting ahead, that must mean I'm not. And if they're getting promoted and I'm not, well, then there's something wrong with me. And I think that's really been ingrained in us. I know for me that was a hard thing in my 20s and 30s to learn that because another female is getting ahead, it doesn't mean I'm not. And to learn to celebrate all the strengths and all the value that other females bring. And I don't know if that comes with age. I don't know if it comes with perspective. I just know that that I'm done competing. I think like what Joy said, you bring what you bring to the table and you own it and you are what you are and you try to bring your best self every day. Something I see in every one of these women on here, I see an innate kindness too. I think we've also been taught that, oh, if I'm going to be an effective boss, I have to be strong and I have to, nobody can sense a weakness in me. Well, that's just not true. You see the women on this screen, they're all kind people. They're all humble people. And to me, that's really, really, really important that we don't lose that sense of ourselves. And so, my commitment is, and one of my staff has this on her signature line, a strong woman stands up for herself. An even stronger woman stands up for others. And that really means I want to support the women that I'm surrounded by. I'm done competing. It's just, it's not a zero-sum game. We can all thrive ahead.
I agree with that. Dana, go right ahead.
Oh, good. I love what you had to say, Melissa. And so hold on to your chairs, because here's what I think is a big barrier to female leadership. And I'm going to say this as a wife and a mother. Marriage and motherhood are huge barriers to women's success. And this is what I mean by that. Nobody else on earth can bring a child into the world but us, right? So that's a role that only we can fill. I remember one time I went to a leadership summit, and I had taken probably 7 or 8 years off of being in the workforce. I made that choice because I wanted to raise my children. I remember a conversation with my mother, and she said, if you can stay home with your children, I would do it, because that is a privilege that used to be only for white women. And I would have loved to have stayed home with my 6 children, but we couldn't afford it. If you can afford it and that's what you want to do, you go ahead and do it. So having said that, skip ahead when I went back to the workforce, and I was so overwhelmed, and I was grateful for the opportunity to be in this leadership summit where we just went in roundtables to women who were in successful roles in corporate positions here in Columbus. And I remember being at a table with a woman who was very high up in JP Morgan Chase. And I said to her, I said, how did you get this job? I don't understand how you got to be where you are. And because her position, she was as high up in her position as her husband was. And she said, I have help. I have a nanny. I can be at a 7 a.m. meeting because somebody else is taking care of my children. Somebody else takes my children to the doctor in the middle of the day. If somebody else is picking up the dry cleaning, somebody else is shopping for groceries and cooking meals. I don't do any of that. I give as much energy to my position as my husband does. And that is the only way I would be able to sit here in this chair. So I didn't know whether to be impressed or deflated. I was like, I can't afford no help. But I really appreciated her candor. It really let me know that this is what it took for real for me to sit in this seat. This woman was sharing her reality, that she wouldn't be able to go to the golf outings and be at the late meetings in the evening and be there early in the morning if she had to really fulfill a traditional motherhood role. she had help. She had somebody who worked for her at least 40 hours a week. So in the morning, they all were served their breakfast by this person so she could enjoy her children's company and read the Wall Street Journal. How many of us can do that? It was really enlightening to me. So I think the roles that we take on, and because we want to, can sometimes really be a barrier to our being able to be successful and be leaders, because honestly, there is a high cost to be paid in terms of compensation, in terms of career advancement, if you take time to be with your family. So, really looking at different ways to define what success looks like in leadership. And so anyways, I just thought that was really interesting what this executive at Chase shared with me. She had help.
Thank you, Dana. I do have another question I want to get to. You guys know I sent you like 10 questions, and I knew this would be a lot of conversation, not to be able to get to all of them. But I do want to ask this one. It said that best successes come from the heels of failures. What has been your greatest failure, and what have you learned from it? Anybody want to jump in, or I'm just going to do like a teacher and just pick someone out?
I'll jump in on this one, Marlise. And I think, I see it more of a missed opportunity for me. I wish that I would have prioritized my mental health at an earlier age. And so to me, that was, it's an opportunity that I missed. And once I prioritized my mental health, my world changed. Opportunities that were there. I was able to be a better sister, be a better friend, and honestly, be a better professional because of it. And I think as we look into, what we're currently living through right now with the pandemic, and when you see unrest, there's been a lot of mourning. A lot of us are hurting. There's a lot of trauma. And I always like to take the opportunity to just remind people and encourage them to make their self-care and wellness a priority for them, especially right now. Make sure that you make your mental health a priority.
Can I jump in really quick, Maurice? And I totally
Sure.
agree with what you said. I think one of my greatest failures early on in my career was I became so busy and I became about the job that I forgot about people being human beings. I actually worked for a medical corporation prior to even becoming a case manager, or after I became a case manager. And there was a young lady who came to me, and I was in charge of all the hours. So she came to me and she said, and I hadn't seen her in a while. So she did home visits. And she said, Miss Joy, if I don't get any hours, I'm going back out to these streets. I was so busy. It was on a Friday. I was so busy. I said, okay, I said, don't do that. Just come back to me on Monday. I promise you I got you. I was just so busy just trying to make sure that the job was the job, right? And I was presenting, strength and leadership and, the image. I turned the television on Saturday evening, and there was a report of 5 young ladies who had gone to, and I don't, someplace in some community, it was more rural outside of Columbus. They went into the store and they stole. They run out of the store. There was a Samaritan that comes out to say, hey, stop. These young girls just, I don't know if it was just scared, but they, this man jumped in front of the car, and unfortunately he was hit, and she was the driver. So from that, not that I could have done anything on that Friday, but I always like it. Every day I get up and I wonder, what kind.
Oh no, did we lose Deputy County
There
Administrator?
we go. I don't know. I think it's my internet, so I apologize. I'm in the back at Northland. But just really quick, I always often wonder, what conversation could I have stopped if I would just taken the time to listen? Could I have changed? Wish she had disclosed, and could I have changed the trajectory of that bad decision that she made? Because people are human. They have human feelings. They have things outside of work. And that is what really many times, those are the influencers of how they come to work every day.
Yes, thank you. So my last question for you all, where will we find you on Saturday morning at 10 a.m.? For me, I hope to still be asleep at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Marlise, I'll say that it depends on the season, but right now, as we are heading into spring, I love, I definitely believe in that adage, pay yourself first. And I mean that in terms of wellness, taking care of yourself. So on a Saturday morning, I will be on my bicycle or out for a run, taking the dog for a walk, gardening. I really believe that our bodies were made for movement, and I love to take the opportunity to just be as physically active as I can on the weekend when I have more time for that.
I would echo that. I think to the point of mental health, I think wellness and the exercise component is so huge for people's mental wellness. So I'll be at a dance fitness class. I can't dance, but I think I can. So I'll be at a dance fitness class, moving my head to a bunch of pop music. And that's what makes me feel good. And that's what keeps me energized.
I'll be sitting at home drinking coffee with my husband.
That's me. I'm going to be sitting on my deck with a cup of tea, watching the birds at the bird feeder. That's
Nice. Well, thank you. We are at our time, and I knew it would go by so fast. I probably could have you guys here for another couple of hours just to talk about your leadership. But I want to thank you all very much for taking the time out today to join the Coffee and Conversation out of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I hope that our guests today have been able to take away something that you have added today for your roles that you hold within Franklin County. I'm proud to be a Franklin County employee in what I do, but you all guys inspire me to do better. So next month, Coffee and Conversation will be centered around National Health Month. Thank you all again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Marlise.